Well, we got our first 2 episodes of X-Men 97, and it left us with questions, one of the biggest ones being, what is going on with Rogue and Magneto? There are spoilers ahead, and we're going to dive into where this story might be coming from. It has some comic history, and could be taking us in an interesting direction. Now, before we do that though, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell for all the updates. We do daily Marvel and DC videos, and we want to be your place for all the superhero news, but we're going to bring it to you truthfully and transparently, so you are really in the know. Well, we got our first 2 episodes of X-Men 97, and for me, it delivered pretty solidly. We did a full review on the episode, should be linked down below, but for many fans, this is the biggest hanging question from episode 1. In this week's episode, shortly after Magneto, quote, joins the team, Rogue goes to see the former villain. Now, he plays it off like he wants to be alone, but a conversation between them about how much Eric loved Charles really kinda draws Rogue in. Now, what's interesting is Magneto grabs Rogue's hand and tries to take off her glove, and he says, "I fear you would do your best to avoid being alone with me, Rogue." At this point, she pulls her hand away, and Magneto drops a bomb. Do you think your team would still trust you if they knew? Now, you might think this is referring to her powers, but it seems pretty clear to me something was going on between the two that we never knew was happening in the original series. Now, Rogue replies, "This was a long time ago, Eric, and that cat's got to stay in the bag." And unfortunately, at this point, the conversation is interrupted by helicopters landing at Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. Now, I have to say, it is super curious that her powers don't work on Magneto. The character throughout the series has been quite a powerhouse, and I'm not sure if it has something to do with his control over the electromagnetic spectrum, or if he's such an Omega-level mutant that for some reason she can't quite siphon off his powers. I suspect that will be explained this season, and it could play into maybe repairing her relationship with other people, specifically Gambit. Now, this has fans a-buzzing, with the suggestion that there was a romantic relationship between the 2 characters either during the first series or sometime in between. And although that question hasn't been answered, it's pretty clear there was something going on. Now, if you know the comics, this brings up a huge question and makes you wonder where it's going. Now, there was an Earth 27 variant of the characters where Magneto and Rogue actually had a son. His name was Magnus. And in his world, he was a pretty powerful mutant on his own. He had a ton of very similar powers to Magneto, having the ability to manipulate not only magnetism, but various forms of light and other parts of the radio spectrum. He also had something called steel transmutation. And like her mother, flesh-to-flesh contact with Magnus was lethal, but in this case, instead of siphoning off their life force or powers, it transformed the other beings into solid steel. Now, given this history in the comics, it does make you wonder where they're going in this season. I honestly do not think they're going to bring Magnus Lencher to life in this version of the X-Men, but the relationship itself has a solid comic base, and it's clearly going to impact the rest of the season. There's probably no other character it's going to impact more probably than Gambit. We know Gambit saw Rogue leave Magneto's room, and by the end of the 2nd episode, it became very clear to everybody there was a lot of jealousy starting to form inside the team. Now, whether this sees Gambit turn on Rogue and Magneto, we're going to have to wait and see. He's often known as a bit of a hothead, but this storyline is playing out in a way that's pretty unexpected, and I don't even think we know all the questions yet to try to figure out what the answers are. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, they reveal a bit more. I definitely think they're going to give us more context on the relationship between the 2, and it is more than a little curious that Magneto seems immune to Rogue's powers, especially given the history of the franchise and how that first movie went. I can't wait for more.